Hello everyone, my name is Marion. The near-death experience is a phenomenon that has gained more popularity in the recent years and become more common in the recent years as well. For those that don't know, the near-death experience is when someone who is brought back from clinical death claims to have had an extraordinary experience all the while their heart and their brain were non-functioning, at least from what we know. This experience can entail things like floating above their body, seeing a tunnel with a bright light at the end of it, reuniting with dead loved ones, meeting supposed deities, going through a life review where they feel everything they've ever felt and or made other people feel as well, before they are eventually told that they cannot stay and must go back to the physical world, to which then they do. That's the most basic rundown of what these experiences are like, but they can also vary in many ways as well. Some people just stay floating above their bodies, being able to go rooms away, and being able to see and hear things going on in these said rooms that they should have no way of knowing. They can vary in many ways, but they all most of the time follow a very similar pattern. They've become more common in the recent years thanks to the invention of CPR back in the 1960s. Before that time, if your heart stopped, you were pretty much dead. But nowadays we can bring people back, and sometimes, just sometimes, those people had a journey on that way back. As for what causes them, we do not really know. Some scientists have begun to believe that our consciousness, which makes you and me, is not actually created by the brain but rather filtered by it. Instead of being a computation, it's more so a fundamental part of our reality. It's a theory that is both growing in popularity but is also still extremely controversial. In fact, Christof Koch, who's actually a lead researcher in the field of consciousness, has gone on to say that he's beginning to believe that consciousness is probably not entirely physical, even going further to say that he's becoming more of an idealist, though as a scientist he still wishes to find a physiological reasoning behind it. This is a crazy statement, as materialism has been the leading philosophy in science for years, which basically means that things either must be made up of some type of matter and or physical process. It was one of the biggest proponents that was used by the leaders of the new atheism movement, with their argument being that there is no God or afterlife because we have no evidence of God particles or afterlife particles. Though with the study of consciousness becoming more and more elusive, many who identified themselves as materialists no longer identify as such. Now, does this mean that NDEs are absolute proof of the afterlife? No. They could be, but who knows? Maybe tomorrow we'll figure out how a dying brain creates these experiences that people who go through them claim them to be more real than real. Science is an ever-evolving field. Maybe tomorrow we'll say that consciousness really is non-physical, and that when our physical body dies, we truly do get to live on, and maybe some of us come back. And or it's all in our head, and it's just our brains tricking us. Who knows? I'm not here to try to convince you that these prove to us that there is 100% a God or afterlife. I'm just here to talk about some of my personal favorite experiences that I have read and or have heard, and also to say that things aren't so black and white when it comes to this existential question that it seems like so many people believe that they 100% have the answer to. And that goes for both sides. I am a filthy agnostic. Like I said, who knows where we will be in the research of all of this in the next few years, alright? Basically what I'm saying is don't start throwing hypotheses at me that have either been disproven or need more research done on them, okay? This video is not necessarily made for debate, but to look at these for what they are and just how extraordinary they can be. With that all being said, I want to talk about some of my personal favorite NDEs that I've either read and or I've heard. So yeah, let's get to it. This first one is a rather infamous one and was brought to light by Dr. Bruce Greyson, who many consider to be the father of NDEs, if you will, because he has been researching them for well over 50 years. This one comes from a man known as Jack Bybee and takes place in 1970s South Africa. At the age of 25, Jack Bybee had come down with a serious case of pneumonia, and it would occasionally cause him seizures. His primary nurse who took care of him during this time was a woman named Anita. One day, Anita told Jack that she would be taking the long weekend off to celebrate her 21st birthday, leaving him in the care of the other nurses. And on that very Friday that she was gone, Jack would go into severe respiratory arrest and flatline. Jack was then transported to another plane. He was in the middle of a field when he then saw Anita running up to him. Jack asked her what she was doing there, to which then she responded, "Why, Jack, I've come to fluff up your pillows, of course, and to make sure that you're all right. But Jack, you must return. Go back. Tell my parents I'm sorry I wrecked the red MGB. Tell them I love them." To which then she ended up walking away through a gate into a garden. As soon as Jack was brought back, he told a nurse what he had just experienced, to which then she bursted into tears and fled out of the ward. Jack then later learned that Anita and this nurse were actually really good friends. He then also later learned that Anita had unfortunately passed away in a fatal car crash. Her parents actually gifted her a red MGB sports car for her birthday, to which she immediately sped off with it. At this time, no one knew that Anita was dead. This is one that still baffles me. Jack saw her even though he believed her to still be alive, was told about the crash, was told about the model of the car, but most importantly, found all this out before anyone at this point had even known. He knew about the crash long before anyone else did, as it actually happened only mere hours before he went into severe respiratory arrest. There's actually apparently more to his story that he's told, but this is the rundown that is most well known. This story, along with Bruce Greyson's personal story that he had with the patient in the emergency room, is very often repeated in his interviews. In fact, the main reason why I didn't include the spaghetti stained tie story is because despite the fact that it's still an amazing story, literally if you search anything about him or watch any interview that he's in, he will bring it up pretty much, because it's literally the story that like ushered him into the field of NDEs pretty much. It's his origin story. With that being said, let's move on to the next story. This next story I had found out about through Sam Parnia's Rethinking Death documentary here on YouTube, and comes from a man by the name of Jeffrey Olson. In the year 2000, Jeffrey and his family were going for a drive when they were involved in a very severe wreck. When the car finally came to a complete stop, Jeffrey was still barely conscious as he could hear his 7-year-old son crying in the backseat of the car, and tragically that was the only family member he could hear, as his wife and youngest son had unfortunately perished instantly in the crash. Jeffrey then described seeing a light, describing it as tangible, like as if it was really there, before eventually he started to float up out of his body. As he rose above the scene of the crash, his wife, who he had known to have been dead at this point, was there in the light with him, and the two began to have a very intense conversation. She told him adamantly that he needed to go back, that if he did not go back, their 7-year-old son would be orphaned and without a parental figure, and so he says that he made a choice and went back to his body. I remember when first watching this documentary, this story felt so intense. The fact that this man tragically lost 2 family members that day in a car accident, but then also supposedly spoke to one of them who told him that he needed to go back or else their son would be without a parental figure, like, that is a lot. The part that got me the most, however, was really him being barely conscious and describing the fact that he knew that his wife and youngest son was dead because he couldn't hear them. Like, that's awful. With that being said, it is still a crazy and tragic story to hear. Now, you might actually notice that there's actually a slight correlation between these two stories, and that is the supposed telling of, "You must go back." This is a phrase that is very often said in a lot of these people's experiences, whether it be from a passed away family member or some type of entity. They are told that they must go back and that it's not their time yet. I always found this part of near-death experiences really interesting. Like I said, despite all of these being very unique, a lot of them do tend to follow similar patterns, and this is one of them. With that being said, let's move on to the next one. This story comes from Emily Williams Cook, Dr. Bruce Greyson again, and Dr. Ian Stevenson. This story was experienced by the man known as Al Sullivan. On January 18th, 1988, Al Sullivan was rushed into the emergency room for what became a quadruple bypass surgery. Earlier that morning, he was having irregular heartbeats, which got him admitted into the hospital in the first place. During his operation, he had a clear sensation of leaving his body, going upwards, going through a smoky-like atmosphere before ending up in an amphitheater-like place. He could see his own body on the operating table split open, to which then he saw the surgeon, who had only just explained to him what he was going to be doing during the operation, flapping his arms as if he were trying to fly, which really confused Al. As soon as he came to and was able to speak, Al then tried to tell the cardiologist what he had just went through. The cardiologist just tried to tell Al that he was probably hallucinating from the drugs that was given to him. That was until Al mentioned the doctor flapping his arms as if he were trying to fly. It was at that point the cardiologist's eyes widened and he asked Al who had told him that. Al explained that he saw it himself from above the operating room. And so the cardiologist then explained that if the surgeon had not yet scrubbed in, he did not want his ungloved hands to touch the sterile operating room. So he would flatten his hands against his chest and would give instructions by pointing his elbows to his assistants. The doctor himself would later confirm this. This is just a summary of Al's story, as it actually goes much deeper than what I've said here today, with at one point supposedly Al's mother actually floating down to the operating room herself to move the surgeon's hand onto the left side of Al's heart, to which then in response, the surgeon then supposedly did like this fly swatting away gesture. This story is a rather infamous one as it showcases the out-of-body experience aspect of NDEs really well, with Al, despite the fact that he was completely sedated and they were doing quadruple bypass surgery on him, was able to observe the doctor's weird flapping arm habit, if you will, or as he put it. This is something that happens a lot in these stories where despite the person's heart and maybe their brain not functioning, they are able to perceive and hear things happening from rooms away. Hell, we even have cases of people who were born blind being able to see in their near-death experiences as well. It's such a weird conundrum where a lot of these people will say themselves that they were able to perceive things better outside of their bodies than they were within their bodies. It's something that really fascinates me a lot. With that being said, let's move on to the final story. This final one is my personal favorite, mostly because of the fact that it's just kind of funny. I know that sounds rude, but you'll see what I mean, all right? This story, much like our second story, was taken from Sam Parnia's Rethinking Death documentary here on YouTube and was told by Dr. Tom Alfredide. It was Tom's first day as a doctor, and needless to say, he was very terrified. He had this superior second-year resident who pretty much told him that he would be there every step of the way throughout the entire 36-hour period. To which then he immediately left him behind. Tom then greeted a patient in a room, introducing himself, and then eventually that patient's eyes ended up rolling into the back of his head and he flatlined. Tom immediately dove onto the patient's chest and began CPR. It was at this point that the patient's wife actually came into the hospital, to which a nurse came by and told Tom to go and talk to her while she tried to shock him back. Tom then went out of the room, down the hallway, and spoke to the patient's wife, where he was not very optimistic about the current situation. It was around 11:30 when the patient's lunch actually came in. Tom, realizing that the patient's probably not going to end up eating this lunch since he was still currently being resuscitated, decided to eat it himself since he had not had breakfast earlier that day. The patient was in the hospital for about a month after the incident, and it was apparently a very rocky process for him. But then, on the last day before he got checked out, he asked Tom to come inside the room, close the door behind him, and sit down. Tom then asked the patient what he needed, to which then he described that he had had an experience during his cardiac arrest, and it had been bothering him for well over a month, and he needed his help. The patient then explained that he had left his body during the arrest and saw everything, even following Tom all the way down to the hallway where he spoke with his wife. He then tells Tom that he didn't like how pessimistic he was being about the situation, that he could have been a little bit more optimistic about his options, and on top of all that, he ate his lunch. Tom was obviously a bit taken back by this, but then the patient said something that really caught his attention. He then told him that while he was over here dying, Tom was feeling sorry for himself because his second-year resident had left him behind. This was a thought that Tom himself says that he never vocalized to anybody. The patient knew what Tom was thinking, and that really stuck with him. This is my favorite NDE story that I have ever heard. Not just because of the fact that the patient was obviously pulling Tom's leg a bit despite the circumstances, but also because the patient was able to know what Tom was thinking, which is something that also happens in these experiences. Some people describe in their out-of-body experiences and or their NDEs that they are able to feel and or hear what a person is thinking. Like, it's crazy. It's fucking crazy. It's so crazy that Christof Koch at one point had to address this, and he himself had a hard time believing this.
Where is his experience? What's the substrate for his experience? And then all these claims, these, to me, outlandish claims that the patient has access to the thoughts of his loved ones and knew what the doctor at the bedside was actually thinking. I find this all very, very strange. And it certainly goes flat out against physicalism. So it's a little bit troubling.
I also love this story because rather than hearing it from a patient's perspective, which obviously is still a breathtaking thing to hear these people talk about their amazing experiences, there's something that's so, there's something about hearing it from a doctor's perspective that really, grabs me, I guess. Tom was this new guy in a scary environment who got fucked over by another colleague who claimed he would help him. I know how that feels. A patient flatlines in front of him, and then a month later is able to describe everything that he did in those moments down to what he was thinking. Like, you would freak the fuck out too. But overall, these were my favorite NDE stories. Like I said, this video is not here to try to prove to you that there is something beyond us. This video, if anything, is trying to prove that things are not so black and white when it comes to this world, and that extraordinary things can seemingly happen. This world is a lot more interesting than some of us might think. These stories are incredible, whether it is just our brain tricking us or there really is something more to us. Like I said, who knows where we will be in the next coming years of research, but no matter what, I'm very excited to see what comes next. Thank you all for watching this video. I have been filming this video for a little more than 2 hours now. At one point, I actually had to stop for an hour, both because my camera died and also because I felt like my body was about to give out. So yeah, that was crazy. For those of you who are subscribed, I know it's been a while since my last video, literally since early February. There's a good reason for that. For those of you that remember in my last few videos, I had pretty much said that I had gotten laid off from my previous gig. But anyways, so I recently got a brand new gig. I'm now working for Zed Dabani, a fellow YouTuber who is this like news/political channel, and yeah, I'm an editor and thumbnail artist again, so that's really cool. I'm really happy to be able to at least contribute somewhat to helping people during these very difficult times, these times of uncertainty, and just how terrifying things are seeming right now on the outside world. It's really saddening to see everything that's going on, and to those of us who are obviously getting targeted with everything that's going on, I really hope that you're able to stay strong during this, and I hope that everything will be okay. And that's the most that I can really do, besides of course trying to take action as much as I can, along with everyone else around here, you know. But yeah, I'm really happy to be doing what I'm doing, and I'm really happy to be able to finally make a brand new video. So yeah, I know it's kind of a dark subject compared to my last video, but this was something that I've wanted to talk about for years. Near-death experiences is something that I've been interested in for quite a while now. I think the thing that upsets me is that people tend to write them off as just like hot, like, you know, like, oh, it's just this, and this, and things like that. But really, when you look into them, they really can be extraordinary, like, experiences that these people go through, you know? And as for if they are something more or if they aren't, you know, like, obviously everybody wants them to be something more. I mean, of course, I would want them to be something more as well, but when it comes down to it, we do not know at this moment, you know? But like I said, maybe that'll change, who knows? Yeah, thank you so much for watching this video. I hope you all enjoyed it. I'm gonna pass out. I'll guess maybe I'll see you guys again sometime soon. And remember, stay safe and sane. Bye.